Before we get started with today's video, I wanted to take a quick second just to remind everyone to hit that like button, smash it, gently tap it, whatever it takes. Subscribe to this channel because this video is the beginning of the Atana Geeks journey. And that being said, this is a demo. It's meant for me to experiment with different camera angles and lighting and format of the video as a whole. So the intent is to just get it started, to get it rolling, for me to learn, because I've never done this before. I'm not a film person. I don't understand lighting and things like that. What I understand is cars. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, we'll look back at this video and be like, wow, I can't believe how absolutely awful that was. But that's okay because we're starting and we're here. So without further ado, let's jump in. Hey everyone, my name's Eli, and this is a 2015 Jeep Grand Cherokee Ecodiesel. Now I know what you're thinking, why am I reviewing a dirty, old Jeep Grand Cherokee? Well, first, it's a Jeep, so it should always be dirty. And second, that's because this is my Jeep. First things first, let's talk about the exterior of this car. I love the Jeep Grand Cherokee. I think it's one of the best looking vehicles out on the market. You know, I'm typically not a fan of chrome trim, especially on black cars, because it looks a little usually gaudy to me, kind of overdone, a little too blingy. But on this car, I think it looks awesome. It's just one of those cars that the design has been around for a really long time, but it seems to age really well. Not only that, it is super capable. And one of the things that Jeep seems to do really well is hide little Easter eggs. If you look into the headlights, you'll see that there's a little old military Jeep built into the headlight. And that's just one of those details that I think is phenomenal. Now, the Jeep Grand Cherokee is a large car. It's in the D segment, and I'm not going to look into the specs because it's an old car and nobody cares anymore. But it has plenty of size for me to do everything I want, and for most families to do anything that they want as well. Of course, like most vehicles of this type, we have a nice big hatch and a trunk compartment that fits a ton of stuff. I've moved a lot over the years, and all I've needed to move across the country from Michigan to California and inside different states is my Jeep and sometimes a U-Haul for the couches and things like that. But there is so much space in here. You can fold down these seats. It's a 60-40 split, and there's no problem, zero problem. So this is the Overland trim vehicle, sort of one step below the high-level Summit, but this is a pretty loaded one. It's got most everything that I think I'd need. In terms of the sensors on the car, we've got a forward-facing radar and a forward-facing camera on this one. We've got a 4-channel ultrasonic system, so there are 4 little dots in the rear only, none in the front. And we have 2 rear short-range radars that are likely somewhere here integrated into the fascia. Let's talk about the interior of this car. Forgetting all of the junk that my normal everyday driving creates in here. But in general, super comfortable car. To drive as a daily driver, there's plenty of space. I'm 6 feet tall, so sometimes in especially smaller cars, I tend to be a little bit cramped, and even if I slide the seat all the way back, I still don't have enough legroom. But for a car like this, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, there is no problem. The seats are electronic. You can slide them forward and back. Everything is pretty much decked out in leather. We've got really nice material, this leather wrapping and nice stitching all around the doors and the center console. Steering wheel is kind of large, but nice to hold. Up here we've got some faux wood, and we kind of have this trimmed all around the different parts of the vehicle, like the center console, the doors. Plenty of storage in this car as well. We got this top layer here, and then if you tap the other button, you've got plenty of random stuff you can keep in here. And you got your, you can plug in your USBs and your chargers as well. This is one of the few cars that still has a micro SD slot. So if you have your music on a micro SD slot card, you can just toss it in there, and the infotainment system will play your music directly off of that. Kind of silly. Nobody really carries around a micro SD with music, do they? The Uconnect infotainment system is incredibly easy to use. It's pretty responsive, but if I had any complaint about it, it would be that when you're trying to switch menus, sometimes it takes slight second to respond, not a very noticeable delay, but there really isn't much to complain about the system. But you also have the hard buttons, which I really appreciate. It makes it very easy to use the system while you're driving to adjust the HVAC, the air, the temperature, and the volume knobs. So in addition to having the regular volume knob, you also have controls behind the steering wheel here. There are these little buttons that let you skip the track or change the volume, which is very convenient and exists in a lot of Fiat Chrysler's products. We have some shift paddles back here, but they're very cheap, plasticky, but you're driving a Jeep, not a Ferrari. So it just gives it a little bit of a nice sporty touch if you want to use it. Before we take this car out on the road and actually talk about how it drives, let's talk a little bit about what features it has. So in addition to regular cruise control, it also has adaptive cruise control with stop. And there are different flavors of adaptive cruise control, and I'll talk about those in another video. But this version is called adaptive cruise control just with stop. So now that we've got the exterior and interior stuff taken care of, let's take this Jeep out on a drive and talk about the ride quality, the driver assistance features, and just the powertrain in general. Let's do it. So one of the first things that you'll notice when you take the Jeep Grand Cherokee Ecodiesel on a drive is all of that torque within this engine. I mean, this thing was made for towing, and it is amazing at it. Torque is what really gives you, from stoplight to stoplight, that fun factor. Horsepower isn't everything, but because the 3.0 liter Ecodiesel has a lot of torque but not a lot of horsepower, you'll find that when you're on the highway and you're cruising along on the highway, and if you're trying to overtake traffic while you're at speed, it can kind of chug along a little bit, be a little slow to overtake. But man, stoplight to stoplight, from 0 to 40 and 50 and 60, this thing is a blast to drive. It takes a little bit for that turbo to spool up when you hit the acceleration, but once it gets going, especially at lower speeds with all that torque, it's so fun. You never feel like you don't have enough power to do what you need to do. The noise isolation within the cabin is also very good, because you do get some of the diesel engine chatter up front, but not enough for it to be noticeable. If you drive with music on, you'll never notice it. Currently I can hear it because obviously the music is off and I'm talking to you, but man, what a refined powertrain. What a refined car. The other thing that you'll notice with the Jeep Grand Cherokee Ecodiesel is how it can be kind of wobbly driving, and that's due to the air suspension in the car. But when you're taking curves and you're driving the car around bends, you can feel sort of how it's meandering across the road. It's a big SUV, so there is body roll. And, with the steering feel of it as well, it's a Jeep, and Jeeps kind of they're not so direct, they're not so responsive, but it's an off-roader. Lock to lock, it has a lot of travel, so you can be pretty precise about where you're trying to put the car, and it's very forgiving in terms of placement on the road. If you're just a normal, everyday driver, just getting around town, it's a super comfortable drive. It's easy to maneuver. I'm just very impressed with how comfortable this car is. In terms of the driver assistance features that exist on this car, for safety, we have automatic emergency braking and blind spot monitoring. It does have a forward-facing camera, but it doesn't have any lane keep assist or lane departure protection or anything like that. The basics. You have your indicators in each mirror that tell you when there's an object in your blind spot as you're traveling, and if you attempt to put on the blinker and there's an object there, it'll give you a little warning. In terms of parking, it has a 4-channel park assist system only in the rear. So only while you're reversing, while you have the reverse camera up, will you get the beeps as you're trying to back into a spot if there's an object back there. There's nothing in the front, so you don't have any of that kind of protection. And of course, the big one, adaptive cruise control. When the car in front of me slows down, this car will slow down all the way to a stop. But because it has a mechanical park brake, it doesn't hold at that stop. After 3 seconds of staying at a stop, the car will actually time out and cancel adaptive cruise control and start rolling forward. So you need to be ready to brake. So in terms of how the adaptive cruise control system feels in this car, there are 4 different time gap settings, and the time gap is another word for distance. And so you can choose how close or how far away you are to the car in front of you. Oh, so we're actually coming up to a rough stop right now. Oh, there we go. So that was an AEB request. AEB is automatic emergency braking. The Honda in front of me decided to cut out, and it cut back in last minute as the light was turning red. So when it cut back in, the vehicle recognized that it didn't have enough room or enough braking power to stop on its own. So the system requested that I take over and hit the brakes. I think that Honda actually was terrified of me ramming into the back of it. But one thing that I really love about this car is that it's very confident when it comes to braking on its own when adaptive cruise control is on. It doesn't waste time in braking, and it doesn't make you feel unsafe. It doesn't ever make you feel like you're about to hit the vehicle in front of you. But a lot of systems that do that and are very conservative in their braking approach usually have a system that are also conservative in its acceleration. But what I love about the way Fiat Chrysler does their adaptive cruise control systems is that it builds confidence on both ends. It brakes confidently so that you know that it'll stop before you get into a bad situation, but it'll also take off confidently. It'll accelerate and make you feel like it knows what it's doing, so that you're never, jumpy on the brakes or trying to intervene with the system. It never makes you feel like you need to intervene. So that's something that I really love about it. One thing that I will say, though, is that the ACC system tends to hold on to lower gears a little bit longer than I would normally. It's as if it's always ready to sort of take off on command, which isn't good and bad. It's probably a little bad for fuel economy, but when you're using an ACC system, the system will not react to stationary cars most of the time. Depending on how new the car is and how new the system is, ACC systems are not designed to brake on a car that it hasn't detected as moving previously. So if you're coming up to a stoplight and the system wasn't following the car in front of you, but the car in front of you is stopped, please apply the brakes on your own. The car likely will not stop on its own. So yeah, that's just my PSA for the day. But yeah, overall, when it comes to this ACC system, it is very confidence-inspiring, which is something that I look for in adaptive cruise control systems, because you don't want a car that makes you feel like it won't brake in time, but you also don't want a car that's so tentative in taking off and in negotiating traffic in front of you that you just feel like taking over and driving yourself most of the time. That sucks just as much too. But this Jeep strikes a great balance when it comes to performance and braking and safety. And I love this car for going on road trips and long haul drives. It is just so comfortable and nice. It has great fuel economy on the highway. Adaptive cruise control, of course, it's an absolute necessity. I will never ever buy a car without adaptive cruise control. Ever. This is kind of the family Jeep, so to speak. And it's not maybe meant to tackle Moab, but it is plenty capable. It is trail rated. It has the air suspension that'll lift you up when you're going over, rocks or dirt or streams or whatever. But I'm convinced that this car was actually designed for long road trips. It is the most comfortable ride over long distances, and maybe you're doing a little bit of overlanding, maybe you're camping and trying to get to a more remote site. But this Jeep was created for the family adventure, for the solo adventure, for getting from Wyoming to Utah to Texas, and just enjoying every moment of that ride. That's the reason that I love this Jeep more than anything, is that it has plenty of range, it has plenty of get up and go, it can tow, it can get you anywhere you want to be, and be comfortable while you're doing all of that. It's fantastic. Look, I'm telling you that if you buy this car, you will never need another car to do anything.